The bustling office was filled with laughter, but it was not kind laughter. In the break room, a group of staff members gathered around the table, their faces twisted in amusement. They were pointing fingers and giggling, completely unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. At the center of their jokes was a lady named Miss Clara, the janitor who had worked at the company for over 10 years. Her dedication had kept the office spotless. But that day, she would show them that her strength was more than just her cleaning skills. "Look at her." One of the staffers, Jenna, sneered. "She's just mopping the floor like that's all she's good for." The others erupted into laughter, their voices echoing off the walls. Miss Clara, a kind woman with a warm smile, had always ignored their mean comments. But that day, something felt different. She had overheard them talking about her, and their words felt like daggers piercing her heart. She stood by the door, her mop in hand, and took a deep breath. Just then, the office manager, Mr. Thompson, entered the break room. "What's so funny?" he asked, raising an eyebrow, but it was clear he didn't really care. Instead, he joined in on the laughter, casting a side glance at Miss Clara. "Oh, look, it's the cleaning lady. We better not let her catch us making a mess." The room erupted in a chorus of mocking laughter, and Miss Clara's heart sank. But then, in an unexpected moment, she found her voice. "You think it's funny to mock someone just because they have a job you don't respect? Maybe you should try walking in my shoes for a day." The laughter suddenly stopped, and an eerie silence filled the room. The staff stared at her, surprised. Miss Clara was usually quiet, but not today. She stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "You don't know the hard work it takes to keep this place running. You don't see me when I'm scrubbing the floors or emptying the trash. You only see my skin color and a uniform." Mr. Thompson smirked, but she continued, her voice steady. "You can laugh all you want, but one day you'll regret it." The tension in the room thickened as Miss Clara's words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. "What are you going to do? Clean us out?" one of the staff joked weakly, trying to lighten the mood. But Miss Clara wasn't in the mood for jokes anymore. She was done being pushed around. Without warning, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a document. "In fact, I just got a call from the HR department," she announced, holding it high. "They've decided to promote me to senior facilities manager. And guess what? I'll be overseeing you all from now on." Gasps filled the room, and suddenly the laughter turned to nervous chatter. Mr. Thompson's smirk faded as he realized she was serious. "You can't be serious," he stammered, looking around for support. But the staff members shifted uneasily, unsure of how to react. Miss Clara continued, her confidence shining brighter than ever. "That's right. I may have started as a janitor, but I've worked hard to get here. I won't let anyone treat me like I'm less than I am anymore. So if you think you can keep mocking me, think again." And just like that, Miss Clara had turned the tables. But as she turned to leave the break room, a nagging thought lingered in her mind. What would happen next? The office had always been a tough place for Miss Clara. It wasn't just the messy floors and overflowing trash bins. It was the looks, the whispers, and the outright disdain from some of the staff. She remembered her first day on the job years ago, when she had walked in with a bright smile, eager to start, but instead of welcome smiles, she had received cold stares. Over the years, she had learned to brush it off. She knew that not everyone would appreciate her hard work. Many saw her only as the janitor, the woman who cleaned up after them. And that was it. But she had never let their attitudes affect her pride in her work. That day, as she cleaned the floors, she couldn't help but notice how the younger staff members often treated her. They'd leave their coffee cups and snack wrappers lying around, as if she were invisible. In their eyes, she was just there to clean, nothing more. Miss Clara had a story. She had grown up in a tough neighborhood, where she had to learn to stand up for herself early on. Her mother had always told her, "You are as good as anyone else, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Those words echoed in her mind as she pushed her mop back and forth, feeling the weight of her job on her shoulders. The whispers and laughter from the break room had become part of her routine. Sometimes, she would catch a glimpse of their conversations, the way they smirked and rolled their eyes. But that day was different. That day, something inside her snapped. After confronting them, Miss Clara felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Had she really stood up to them? And would they let it go? She made her way back to her cart, still feeling the heat of the moment. But her heart raced, wondering if she had done the right thing. As she cleaned up the last of the lunch leftovers, she couldn't shake off the unease that came with challenging the boss. Mr. Thompson had always been dismissive of her efforts, seeing her as merely someone to order around. But now, she had taken a stand. Would he retaliate? Would the staff turn against her even more? At the end of her shift, she collected her things and headed out, her mind swirling with thoughts. The sunlight outside felt warm on her face, but the shadows of the office loomed large behind her. Would she be able to keep her new position? And what would the others say when they realized she wasn't just the janitor anymore? That evening, Miss Clara sat on her small porch, sipping her tea and watching the world go by. She thought about the next day, about facing those same staff members again. What if they confronted her? What if they laughed at her new position? As the sun dipped below the horizon, she resolved to be strong. She wouldn't let them win. She wouldn't back down. Tomorrow, she would walk into that office with her head held high. And little did she know, the next day would bring more than just the usual work routine. The tension in the air would be palpable, and choices would have to be made. But for now, she simply sat there, lost in thought, unaware of how quickly things were about to change. The following morning, Miss Clara arrived early at the office, her heart pounding with anticipation. The building looked the same, but everything felt different. As she walked through the lobby, she could feel the eyes on her. They were waiting to see how she would handle her new role. When she entered the break room, the staff were already gathered, their conversations halting as she walked in. Jenna was the first to speak, a sly smile on her face. Well, if it isn't our new manager, what are you going to do? Fire us for leaving crumbs on the floor? Miss Clara took a deep breath and smiled back, refusing to let their words get to her. I'm here to help improve our workplace, she said firmly, and I expect everyone to respect each other from now on. Mr. Thompson arrived just in time to hear her words. He eyed her skeptically but didn't say anything. He was still processing what had happened the day before. As the day progressed, the atmosphere remained tense. Miss Clara began her tasks, checking supplies and organizing the cleaning schedule. But the staff whispered behind her back, exchanging glances filled with disbelief and resentment. She could feel the weight of their stares, but she pressed on, determined to show them that she could do this job just as well, if not better, than anyone else. By lunchtime, things had escalated. Jenna and her friends were gathered in the corner, their voices raised in anger. Miss Clara overheard snippets of their conversation. She thinks she can just walk in and take over. It's ridiculous. Jenna fumed. Yeah, who does she think she is? Another added. Miss Clara felt her stomach twist with anxiety. It wasn't just about her job anymore. It was about respect. The office had always been a place where she felt invisible, and now it felt as if they were determined to push her back into that corner. During lunch, she decided to confront them. Can we talk? She asked, her voice steady. The staff looked surprised but reluctantly agreed. They gathered at a table, their faces a mixture of irritation and curiosity. What's your problem with me? Miss Clara asked, trying to keep her tone calm. Jenna crossed her arms defiantly. You don't belong here. You're just the janitor. And yet, I'm your new manager, Miss Clara replied. I'm here to make this place better, and that includes treating everyone with respect. The room fell silent. It was a standoff, the tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. Suddenly, Mr. Thompson entered the room, sensing the charged atmosphere. What's going on? He asked, looking between them. Jenna quickly spoke up. Miss Clara thinks she can just order us around now. But before she could finish, Miss Clara jumped in. I'm not here to order anyone around. I just want us to work together as a team. Mr. Thompson's eyes darted between them, and for a moment, it felt as if he might step in to mediate. But then he shrugged. Well, maybe it's time for you to learn your place, Clara. Miss Clara's heart dropped. Those words stung more than anything. She had tried to make peace, to show them that she was worthy of respect. But here was the man who had dismissed her for years, doing it again in front of everyone. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling. You think you can just be our boss. You're still just the janitor to most of us, he replied, a smug smile creeping across his face. The staff erupted in laughter again, and Miss Clara felt her face flush with anger and humiliation. She wanted to scream, to tell them how wrong they were, but instead, she took a deep breath and turned away. As she walked out of the room, something inside her changed. This was more than just a job to her. It was her life, and she wouldn't let them take that away from her. But what would she do next? As she made her way back to her cart, her mind raced. How could she turn this situation around? Could she really stand up to Mr. Thompson? And more importantly, would anyone stand by her side? That evening, she sat at home, reflecting on the day. Miss Clara knew she had to make a choice. Either she could let them keep pushing her around, or she could fight back. The thought of fighting back filled her with both excitement and fear. What would that look like? What could she actually do? As the night deepened, Miss Clara found herself writing a letter. It was a letter to HR, explaining everything that had happened. Every hurtful word, every laugh at her expense. She knew she had to stand up for herself and the others who felt powerless. The next morning would be a turning point. Would she deliver the letter, or would she let fear take over? With the sun rising, Miss Clara's heart raced with anticipation, and soon, the office would know exactly who she was. This was just the beginning, but the path ahead was uncertain. Miss Clara could feel the storm brewing, and she was ready to face it head-on. Would she find allies among the staff, or would they continue to mock her? Only time would tell. And as the office doors opened that day, everything was about to change forever. Would she have the courage to follow through? Miss Clara took a deep breath, knowing that the choice she made next could alter everything. What would she decide? As the sun rose, Miss Clara stood in front of the mirror, her heart racing. Today was going to be different. She had drafted a letter to HR, detailing the mockery and disrespect she had faced in her workplace. But something inside her whispered that it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all the other workers who had been pushed aside, treated as if they were invisible. She had to be their voice. Stepping into the office, she felt the familiar buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. The lobby was bustling, and she could see the staff members exchanging glances. As she made her way to her cleaning cart, she could feel the tension in the air, thick and unyielding. Today, she would confront her fears head-on. When she entered the break room, the atmosphere shifted. The same group of staff members who had mocked her just a day before were now silent. Jenna, with her arms crossed, shot her a challenging look. But Miss Clara refused to back down. Instead, she gathered her strength and took a deep breath. "I need to speak with Mr. Thompson," she announced, her voice steady. Jenna snorted. "What for?" "So he can remind you of your place again." "Enough, Jenna," Miss Clara replied, turning to face her directly. "This isn't just about me. This is about all of us working together in this office." Just then, Mr. Thompson walked in, his presence commanding. "What's all the commotion about?" he asked, eyeing Miss Clara with a hint of annoyance. "I'd like to discuss something important," she said, her voice firm. "Can we talk in private?" "Why? What's so special?" he replied, feigning ignorance, but there was a glint of annoyance in his eyes. "Because I'm tired of being treated like I don't belong here," she replied, her courage surprising even herself. "I have something I need to show you." Mr. Thompson rolled his eyes, but reluctantly gestured for her to follow him into his office. The door closed behind them, cutting off the noise from the break room. As Miss Clara stood in front of his desk, she could feel her hands trembling. But she steadied herself and opened the letter she had written. "I've documented the harassment and disrespect I've faced from you and some staff members. This isn't just about me being a janitor. It's about the culture in this office. It's toxic, and it needs to change." He glanced at the letter, then back at her, a sneer creeping onto his face. "You think this will change anything? You're still just a janitor in our eyes." "No, Mr. Thompson," she replied, her voice steady. "I am not just a janitor. I am a person, deserving of respect, and I will not stand for this anymore." Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, studying her with a look of mock disbelief. "Do you really think HR will take you seriously? You're out of your depth here, Clara." She took a deep breath, refusing to let his words break her resolve. "If HR doesn't take me seriously, then I will take it to the next level. I will share this with the local news. You don't want the company's reputation damaged, do you?" His expression faltered for a moment, and she saw a flicker of worry in his eyes. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," she shot back. "You might want to think about how you treat your staff before it comes to that." With that, she turned and walked out of the office, her heart pounding with both fear and adrenaline. She had done it. She had stood up to him. But now, she faced the daunting task of addressing the entire staff. As she returned to the break room, the tension hung thick in the air. The staff looked at her, with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Did you talk to him?" Jenna asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yes, I did," Miss Clara replied, her voice calm. "And I expect everyone here to treat each other with respect. From now on, we're all part of the same team." The room fell silent. The staff exchanged glances, some clearly annoyed while others looked thoughtful. Miss Clara felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was the moment they would begin to understand. "Respect goes both ways, Clara," Jenna retorted. "You think just because you have a title now, you can order us around." Miss Clara's heart sank. "I'm not trying to order anyone around, Jenna. I'm asking for us to work together. I want to help make this a better place for all of us." But Jenna wasn't done. "You really think you can change things? You're just the janitor, remember?" A hush fell over the room, and for a moment Miss Clara felt small again. But then she remembered her mother's words, and a surge of confidence washed over her. "Being a janitor doesn't make me less than any of you. I've worked hard, and I will fight for what's right." With that, she turned and left the break room, determination fueling her steps. But outside, she could feel the atmosphere shift again, the weight of their judgment heavy on her shoulders. Would they ever respect her? As the day progressed, Miss Clara faced not only the cleaning tasks, but also the growing unease among the staff. She could hear their whispers, feel their stares, and it began to wear on her. The mocking laughter had transformed into silent resentment, and she could sense the undercurrents of rebellion brewing. At lunch, she found herself sitting alone, her mind racing with thoughts of how to handle the escalating situation. Would she really go to HR again if things didn't change? Just as she was about to take a sip of her coffee, Jenna and a few others walked into the break room. They had that same mocking smile on their faces, and Clara's heart sank. "What do you want?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "We were just thinking," Jenna said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Maybe we should all start calling you Manager Clara from now on. Wouldn't that be fun?" The others laughed, and for a moment, Miss Clara felt the walls closing in, but she took a deep breath. "You can call me whatever you want, Jenna, but your laughter won't change the fact that I'm here to stay." The laughter faltered, replaced by uncomfortable silence. Jenna opened her mouth to retort, but before she could, Mr. Thompson walked in, his eyes sharp and calculating. "What's going on here?" he asked, sensing the tension. Jenna quickly feigned innocence, just having a little fun with Clara. "You know how it is." Mr. Thompson's gaze flickered to Miss Clara, and she felt a chill run down her spine. "Clara, you need to learn your place in this office. You might have a new title, but that doesn't change the reality." Miss Clara's heart raced as she realized the stakes were higher than she thought. She wasn't just fighting for respect, she was battling against an entire system that seemed determined to keep her in her place. "Maybe you should learn that respect goes both ways," she retorted, surprising herself. "I'm not going to let you or anyone else push me down anymore." The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on her. It was a moment of truth, and Clara felt the weight of it pressing down on her. Would they finally see her for who she was? But instead of backing down, Mr. Thompson sneered. "This isn't a game, Clara. You're playing with fire, and you might just get burned." Clara stood tall, determination coursing through her veins. "I'd rather be burned than be treated like I'm less than I am." The tension crackled in the air, and as Mr. Thompson's eyes narrowed, Clara knew she had crossed a line. What would happen next? Would they finally start to understand? As she left the break room, the weight of their judgment followed her, but she held her head high. She had stood up for herself. But now she had to figure out what came next. Little did she know, the storm was just beginning. Later that afternoon, Clara found herself in the restroom, trying to gather her thoughts. The confrontation with Mr. Thompson replayed in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. But she was determined to keep moving forward, no matter what. As she washed her hands, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. "You've got this," she whispered to herself. "You're stronger than they think." With renewed resolve, she stepped back into the office. But as she walked through the aisles, she could feel the staff's eyes on her, a mixture of anger and disbelief swirling in the air. Jenna was huddled with a group of her friends, whispering furiously. As Clara approached, Jenna's laughter rang out, harsh and mocking. "Here comes our little manager. What are you going to do, Clara? Tell us to clean our desks." Clara felt a spark of anger ignite within her. "Actually, I'm going to ensure that everyone knows what true respect looks like, including you, Jenna." Jenna rolled her eyes, but Clara pressed on, her voice steady. "I won't let you bully me anymore. I'm here to support the whole team. and that means standing up for myself and others. Suddenly, the office phone rang, breaking the tension. Clara walked over to answer it, her heart racing. But as she did, she heard a loud crash behind her. She turned just in time to see a stack of papers topple from a nearby desk, scattering everywhere. Clara rushed to help, but as she did, Jenna pushed past her, sending her sprawling onto the floor. The laughter erupted again, and Clara felt humiliated. But this time, something inside her snapped. "Enough!" she shouted, surprising herself with the force of her voice. "I won't let you treat me like this anymore." The room fell silent, and Clara could see the shock on everyone's faces, including Mr. Thompson's. Just then, the office manager walked in, her expression serious. "What's going on here?" Clara took a deep breath, determined to take control of the narrative. "I've had enough of the disrespect. I'm standing up for myself and for everyone who feels this way." The office manager's eyes narrowed, but Clara refused to back down. "Maybe it's time we have a real conversation about the culture in this office," Clara said, her voice steady, "because things need to change." But as she spoke, she could see Mr. Thompson's expression harden. He wasn't going to let her get away with this. "Don't you dare threaten me, Clara," he snapped. "You think you can just come in here and make demands? You're out of your league." "I'm not threatening you," Clara replied, her heart racing. "I'm simply stating the truth. I deserve respect, and so does everyone else here." Just then, the door swung open, and a group of employees walked in, clearly curious about the commotion. Clara felt the eyes on her, and it gave her a sense of strength. "Who's going to stand with me?" she called out, her voice ringing in the tense atmosphere. But just as the others began to murmur, Jenna stepped forward. "You're all just going to let her talk to us like this? We've been here longer than she has." Clara felt a wave of frustration wash over her. "That doesn't mean you have the right to treat me like I don't belong here." The atmosphere shifted again, and Clara could see some staff members beginning to reconsider. But just as she thought she was gaining ground, Jenna took another step forward, her eyes blazing. "Let's vote on it, then. Who thinks Clara should keep her job?" The challenge hung in the air, and Clara could feel a tension spike. Would they really take a vote? As everyone exchanged glances, Clara's heart pounded in her chest. This could be a turning point, but for better or worse, she didn't know. Would they finally see her for who she was, or would this be the moment that changed everything? Just as the murmurs began to escalate, Mr. Thompson raised his voice. "This is absurd. We're not going to waste our time on a popularity contest." But Clara wouldn't let him derail her. "It's not just about popularity. It's about respect and treating each other as equals." And then, with a quick motion, Jenna grabbed a stack of paper from a nearby desk and threw it into the air, scattering papers everywhere. "Let's see how much respect she really gets." The papers fluttered down like confetti, and Clara's heart sank. She could see the others hesitating, caught in the crossfire. But instead of falling apart, Clara stood tall. "This is exactly the kind of behavior I'm talking about. We need to rise above this. We could do better." But just as she finished, the office manager spoke up. "Enough. This is unprofessional, and I'm going to report this to HR." Clara's stomach dropped. This was it, the moment she had feared. Would they back her or throw her under the bus? As the tension mounted, Clara knew the next steps would be critical. Would she finally get the respect she deserved? Or would this confrontation lead to more trouble than she bargained for? And as the papers settled around her, the fate of her job and the office culture hung in the balance. The office manager's words echoed in Clara's ears, sending a chill down her spine. This was it, the moment of truth. The laughter faded, replaced by a heavy silence. Clara felt the weight of every stare on her, some filled with judgment, others with curiosity. "I'm not afraid of HR," Clara said, trying to project confidence. "I'm standing up for what's right, and I'm not going to let anyone bully me anymore." Mr. Thompson glared at her, his anger palpable. "You're playing a dangerous game, Clara. You might think you're standing up for yourself, but all you're doing is creating more chaos." "Chaos," she replied, her voice rising. "The real chaos is the way this office has been run. Disrespecting people like they don't matter. That's chaos." The office manager stepped forward, her expression serious. "Clara, while I understand your frustrations, this isn't the way to address them. We need to handle this professionally." "But I've tried being professional," Clara retorted. "I've tried to talk to everyone, and all I get is mockery and disrespect. What else am I supposed to do? Jenna stepped closer, a smirk on her face. You could start by acting like you belong here, instead of pretending to be the boss. Clara's patience wore thin, and she could feel the anger boiling inside her. This isn't about pretending, Jenna. It's about having a voice and being heard. Maybe you should just stick to cleaning. Jenna shot back, her eyes glinting with malice. Before Clara could respond, the office manager interrupted. That's enough. I will not tolerate this behavior any longer. Clara, if you truly believe you have a case, let's handle it appropriately. Clara took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. I do believe I have a case. I'm not going to let this workplace culture continue. We can do better. The office manager nodded, her expression softening. Then let's do this the right way. We'll call a meeting with HR, and you can present your concerns there. A murmur spread through the room, and Clara's heart raced. This was a turning point. Fine, Jenna said, crossing her arms defiantly. Let's see how far that gets you. The atmosphere shifted again, the tension hanging thick in the air. Clara could feel the pressure building, but she refused to back down. Let's schedule a meeting then, the office manager said, looking at Clara. I want to make sure we handle this properly. Thank you, Clara replied, her voice steady. I appreciate that. As the office manager made arrangements, Clara took a moment to collect herself. She had stood up to Mr. Thompson and Jenna, and now she had the opportunity to bring her concerns to HR. But she couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered in the air. Would they really take her seriously? As the day went on, Clara returned to her tasks, her mind racing with thoughts of the upcoming meeting. What if HR dismissed her concerns? What if she faced even more backlash from her coworkers? In the following days, the tension continued to simmer. Clara tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but every time she caught Jenna's eye, she felt a surge of unease. The meeting with HR was scheduled for the following week, and Clara knew that it was her chance to make a difference. But she also felt the weight of her coworkers' judgment. When the day of the meeting finally arrived, Clara was a bundle of nerves. She dressed carefully, wanting to project an image of professionalism and strength. As she walked into the HR office, she took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. Inside the room, two HR representatives sat waiting for her, their expressions serious. Clara took a seat across from them, her palms sweaty and her heart pounding. Thank you for coming in, Clara, one of the representatives said. We want to hear your concerns. Clara nodded, trying to steady her voice. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I've been experiencing harassment and disrespect from some staff members, including Mr. Thompson. The HR representatives exchanged glances, and Clara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What do you mean by harassment? She took a deep breath and began to explain everything. The mocking comments, the belittling remarks, and the feeling of being constantly pushed aside. As she spoke, she could feel the weight of her words hanging in the air. Do you have any evidence to support these claims? The other representative asked. Clara hesitated, realizing she hadn't documented everything as thoroughly as she should have. I have some examples, but I didn't record every incident. It's more about the overall culture in the office. One of the representatives nodded thoughtfully. We'll take your concerns seriously, Clara, but we encourage you to document any further incidents moving forward. It's important to have a clear record. As the meeting progressed, Clara felt a mix of hope and anxiety. They seemed to understand her concerns, but she knew it was just the beginning. After the meeting, she left feeling uncertain. Would things really change? Over the next few days, Clara returned to the office, but the atmosphere felt even heavier. It was as if the staff was waiting for something to happen, and Clara couldn't shake the feeling that tensions were rising. One afternoon, as she was cleaning, Clara overheard a conversation between Jenna and Mr. Thompson in the break room. I can't believe she thinks she can just walk in here and demand respect, Jenna said, her voice dripping with disdain. We need to show her who's really in charge. What do you suggest? Mr. Thompson replied, his tone condescending. We need to remind her that she's just the janitor, Jenna sneered. Let's make sure she knows she doesn't belong here. Clara's heart raced. They were plotting against her, and she felt the anger bubbling up inside. But she also felt a surge of determination that wouldn't intimidate her. As she continued her work, Clara made a plan. She would start documenting everything she could, every conversation, every incident, so she would have the evidence she needed. But just as she was gathering her thoughts, A loud crash echoed from the break room. Clara rushed over to see what had happened, her heart pounding. Inside, she found Jenna standing over a spilled coffee pot, her face twisted in anger. "I can't believe she's still here," she shouted. "She doesn't belong. Why don't you just leave her alone?" Another staff member said, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Jenna shot them a glare. "This is our office, and we'll decide who belongs here." Clara felt a surge of anger, but she knew she had to remain calm. "You can't treat me like this, Jenna. I have just as much right to be here as you do." Jenna rolled her eyes, but Clara pressed on. "If you have a problem with me, why don't you say it to my face instead of plotting behind my back?" Jenna's expression darkened, and Clara could feel the tension in the air. This was a tipping point, and she could sense that something had to give. Just then, Mr. Thompson stepped into the room, a smug look on his face. "What's going on here?" "Nothing," Jenna replied, her tone dismissive. "Just dealing with the janitor." Clara took a step forward, her heart racing. "No, Mr. Thompson, we're dealing with the disrespect that's been happening in this office. I won't let it continue." Mr. Thompson's eyes narrowed. "You're in over your head, Clara. You think you could just waltz in here and change everything? This is how it works in the real world." "Maybe the real world needs to change," Clara shot back. "Maybe it's time to treat everyone with respect." The atmosphere shifted, and Clara could see the unease in the eyes of her coworkers. But Jenna wasn't finished. "You're making a mistake, Clara. You're going to regret this." Clara held her ground, feeling the adrenaline surge through her. "I'm not backing down. I'm done being afraid." But as she spoke, Jenna reached for another coffee pot, and Clara felt a surge of panic. Would Jenna really try to hurt her? The tension in the room reached a breaking point, and Clara knew this was just the beginning. "Enough!" Mr. Thompson shouted, his voice booming. "This is unacceptable behavior. We're not going to let this continue." But Clara felt the momentum shift in her favor. She had stood up for herself, and she wouldn't let anyone push her around anymore. As the confrontation continued to escalate, Clara knew she had to make a choice. Would she continue to fight for her right to be respected, or would she back down and let them win? And as the coffee pot clattered to the floor, shattering into pieces, Clara felt the storm brewing, and she was ready to face it head-on. This was only the beginning, and she would not let it end here. What would happen next? Would she finally get the respect she deserved, or would she face even greater challenges? With determination in her heart, Clara prepared for the next chapter of her fight. The stakes were high, but she was ready to rise above the chaos and make her voice heard. And as the pieces of the broken coffee pot scattered around her, Clara knew one thing for sure: she wouldn't back down without a fight. The atmosphere in the break room felt electric as Clara faced off against Jenna and Mr. Thompson. The shattered pieces of the coffee pot lay scattered on the floor like a reflection of the fractured workplace culture. Clara could see the mixture of fear and uncertainty in the eyes of her coworkers. "Pick that up," Mr. Thompson barked at Clara, trying to regain control of the situation. "This isn't how we conduct ourselves in this office." Clara felt the anger bubble up again. "You want me to pick up the pieces of a broken coffee pot while you ignore the real issue here?" She gestured toward Jenna, who stood there smirking. "You think I'm just going to stand by while you all mock me and treat me like I don't belong?" "Maybe you don't," Jenna spat back, her voice dripping with venom. "You're just the janitor, Clara. This is a professional environment, and you're not acting like it." Clara clenched her fists, feeling the weight of Jenna's words. "And maybe it's time you learned that respect isn't just about job titles. It's about treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their position." The tension thickened, and for a moment, the office felt frozen in time. Clara stood her ground, and she could see a few of her coworkers shifting uncomfortably, clearly caught between loyalty to their boss and the growing unease with Jenna's bullying. "Enough!" The office manager suddenly appeared, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "What's going on here?" "Just a little disagreement," Mr. Thompson said, trying to downplay the situation, but the edge in his voice was clear. "Disagreement?" Clara's voice rose. "Is that what we're calling it? Because it feels more like bullying to me. This is exactly what I'm talking about." The office manager looked between Clara and Jenna, her brow furrowing. "Clara, I understand you're frustrated, but this is not the place for these kinds of outbursts. We're all here to do our jobs." "Exactly," Clara shouted. "And I can't do my job if I'm being disrespected." How am I supposed to clean up when I'm constantly being mocked? When I'm treated like I don't matter? Clara's voice cracked, and she felt the tears welling up in her eyes. She quickly blinked them away, unwilling to show weakness in front of her adversaries. The office manager sighed, her expression softening slightly. We will address this in a professional manner, Clara, but you need to understand that the way you're approaching this isn't helping. Clara shook her head, frustration bubbling over. It hasn't helped to stay silent. I'm tired of being quiet. Tired of hiding. I'm not going to let this go anymore. Let's all take a breather, the office manager suggested, her voice steady. Jenna, Clara, I need you both to step outside for a moment. Jenna shot Clara a smug look, clearly enjoying the chaos. Clara felt her heart race. She didn't want to back down, but she knew she had to follow the office manager's lead. Once outside, the cool air hit Clara like a refreshing wave. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. I'll deal with you later, Jenna hissed, stepping closer. Don't think this is over. Clara glared at her, a mixture of anger and defiance swirling inside her. I'm not afraid of you. I'm done letting you bully me. The office manager rejoined them, her expression serious. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Clara, I understand your concerns, but we need to handle this properly. Properly? Clara echoed, incredulous. You mean by ignoring it until it blows up in your face? Because that's what's been happening. Let's focus on finding a solution, the office manager said firmly. I will set up a meeting with HR to address these issues, but I need your cooperation. Clara nodded, her heart racing. I'm willing to cooperate, but I can't promise I won't speak up if things don't change. Fair enough, the office manager replied. But I need you to keep your voice calm. We can't have another outburst. I understand, Clara said, her voice steadier. I'll do my best. With that, they returned to the office, and Clara felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. As they walked back in, the eyes of her co-workers were on her, some filled with sympathy, others with judgment. Clara couldn't tell who was truly on her side. After a few awkward minutes, the office manager called for a meeting to discuss the workplace environment. Clara took a deep breath, preparing herself for whatever was about to happen. As everyone gathered in the conference room, Clara sat up straight, determined to voice her concerns. She looked around the room and saw Jenna whispering to a group of staff members, clearly plotting against her. The anxiety churned in Clara's stomach. Thank you all for coming, the office manager began, her tone professional. We're here to discuss some recent concerns regarding workplace behavior and respect for one another. Jenna rolled her eyes, and Clara felt her anger flare again. You don't respect anyone, Jenna, she snapped, surprising even herself. Shut up, Clara, Jenna shot back, but Clara was on a roll now. We need to talk about the toxic culture in this office. It's not just me, it's everyone. People are afraid to speak up because of the way you treat us. Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and Clara felt a rush of confidence. I know I'm just the janitor, but that doesn't mean my voice doesn't matter. It's time we start treating each other like equals. The office manager nodded, encouraging Clara to continue. What specific issues have you encountered, Clara? Clara took a deep breath, ready to lay it all out. For months, I've dealt with constant mockery from some staff members, including Jenna. It makes it impossible to do my job. I hear things like, just the janitor, or she doesn't belong here. This isn't just about me. It affects everyone's morale. As Clara spoke, she could see her coworkers shifting uncomfortably. A few even nodded in agreement, but she could still feel Jenna's piercing glare. I don't see why you're making such a big deal out of this, Jenna retorted, crossing her arms defiantly. If you can't handle the heat, maybe you shouldn't be in this office. Clara felt her blood boil. You know what? This isn't just about handling heat. It's about creating a safe space for everyone. We should be supporting one another, not tearing each other down. Let's try to keep this professional, the office manager interjected, trying to restore order. Professional? Clara scoffed. How can we be professional when we're being bullied? This isn't just about the little things. It's about the culture of this office. It's broken. The tension in the room was palpable, and Clara could see the divide forming between those who supported her and those who backed Jenna. But the fear of retaliation was evident on the faces of many. We need to have a dialogue, the office manager said, looking around the room. Does anyone else have something to add? One brave soul finally spoke up, I've seen the way Jenna treats Clara. It's not right. We should all feel safe at work. Clara felt a rush of gratitude toward her co-worker. Exactly. This isn't just my fight. It's everyone's. We need to support each other. But just as Clara felt hope rising, Jenna shot back, her voice dripping with contempt. You're all just going to believe her. She's just a janitor. What does she know about how to run this place? Clara clenched her fists, refusing to let Jenna's words get to her. Being a janitor doesn't make me any less of a person. I have just as much right to be here as anyone else. And if you think I'm going to back down because of your bullying, you're mistaken. The office manager looked between Clara and Jenna, clearly torn. This isn't going to help us find a solution. Clara, I appreciate your passion, but we need to remain focused on the goal, improving our workplace culture. Improving it requires honesty, Clara exclaimed. And that means facing the truth about how we treat each other. Jenna scoffed. You think you can just come in here and be a hero? This is reality, not a movie. Clara's heart raced, but she knew she had to stay strong. I'm not looking to be a hero. I just want to work in an environment where I'm respected. We all deserve that. Just then, the office manager's phone buzzed, cutting through the tension. She glanced at it and frowned, her expression turning serious. I need to take this call. Let's take a break and reconvene in 10 minutes. As everyone stood to leave, Clara could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was just the beginning of a long fight, but she was determined to see it through. She wouldn't let Jenna or Mr. Thompson intimidate her anymore. As she stepped out of the conference room, Clara noticed Jenna whispering to a small group of employees, her voice low and conspiratorial. Clara's heart raced as she wondered what they were plotting. She had to stay vigilant. As the break concluded and they returned to the room, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. I won't stop fighting for respect and fairness. Not now, not ever. But just as she prepared to continue the discussion, the office door burst open, and the new figure stepped inside. Clara's heart dropped as she recognized him, the head of the company, Mr. Harrison, a man known for his no-nonsense approach. What's all this? He demanded, his voice booming. I heard there's some commotion. I expect to hear the truth. Clara's stomach churned as she realized they were about to face the ultimate test. Would Mr. Harrison support her fight for respect? Or would he side with the people who had bullied her? The tension in the room thickened, and Clara's heart raced. She felt the eyes of her coworkers on her, and she knew she had to be brave. This was a defining moment, and everything could change in an instant. Mr. Harrison, Clara began, her voice steady. We've been discussing the toxic culture in our office, and the harassment I've faced from some staff members. I believe it's time for a change. As Clara spoke, she felt a surge of determination. This was her chance to make her voice heard. But would it be enough to bring about the change she desperately sought? With Mr. Harrison now in the room, everything felt different, and Clara knew that this was the turning point. Would he finally stand up against the bullying and support her? Or would he dismiss her concerns like everyone else? The room fell silent as they waited for his response, each heartbeat echoing like a drum in Clara's ears. The next few moments could change everything. What would happen next? Clara's fate and the fate of her coworkers hung in the balance. The tension in the room was so thick, Clara felt she could almost cut it with a knife. Mr. Harrison's presence loomed large as he surveyed the group, his sharp gaze flitting from Clara to Gemma and back again. The air crackled with anticipation, and, for a moment, it felt like time stood still. Clara, Mr. Harrison began, his tone authoritative, but not unkind. I'm listening. Please, explain what you mean by a toxic culture. Clara's heart raced, but she drew strength from the support she sensed from her coworkers. Mr. Harrison, for a long time, there's been a culture of bullying in this office. I've faced constant ridicule for my position as the janitor. I'm treated as if I don't belong, and that has to change. Is that true, Jenna? Mr. Harrison asked, turning his attention to her. Jenna squared her shoulders, her bravado wavering under the scrutiny. Clara's just being dramatic. Everyone jokes around here. It's part of the workplace. She's taking it way too seriously. Mr. Harrison's brows furrowed. Joking is one thing, but harassment is another. What you might see as harmless banter can be hurtful to someone else. Clara seized the moment. Exactly. It's not harmless when I hear comments like just a janitor, or when I'm belittled in front of others. It's not just me. It affects everyone. I see it in how others are treated as well. It creates a toxic environment where people are afraid to speak up. Some of her coworkers nodded in agreement, murmurs of support rippling through the room. Clara's confidence grew. We spend a large part of our lives at work, and it should be a place where we feel valued and respected, not bullied. Mr. Harrison looked around the room, his expression thoughtful. It's important that everyone feels heard. We can't allow any form of disrespect. This is not how we operate as a company. If there's an issue, it needs to be addressed seriously. Jenna opened her mouth to protest, but Mr. Harrison cut her off. I don't want to hear excuses. I want solutions. If this culture exists, we need to identify the root causes and correct them. Clara felt a swell of hope. This was the first time anyone at such a high level had acknowledged her concerns. I suggest we implement mandatory sensitivity training for all staff members, including management. We need to learn how to communicate respectfully and support each other. I agree, a voice piped up from the back. It was one of the junior employees who had often seemed intimidated by the stronger personalities in the office. We need to create a culture of respect where everyone feels safe to express themselves without fear of retribution. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. That's a good start, but let's not stop there. I want everyone to contribute to this dialogue. I'll set up a meeting with HR to establish a clear path forward. We need to create a safe space for everyone, not just the people who hold certain titles. Clara's heart soared. This was a breakthrough she hadn't dared to hope for. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. It's time for us to take a stand and ensure everyone understands that bullying will not be tolerated. Exactly, he said, his tone resolute. Everyone here should feel valued, no matter their role. I'm tired of hearing about this toxicity. We will put an end to it, starting today. With that, he glanced at Jenna, and I expect your full cooperation moving forward, Jenna. No more jokes at the expense of others. This is a warning. Jenna's face flushed with embarrassment, her bravado crumbling under Mr. Harrison's scrutiny. Of course, I understand, she replied, though her tone was still laced with defiance. Good, Mr. Harrison replied. We will reconvene after the meeting with HR. I want everyone to bring their ideas and solutions to the table. As the meeting concluded, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of relief mixed with exhilaration. She'd have fought hard for this moment, and it felt like a turning point. As she walked out of the conference room, she could see her coworkers exchanging glances, some of them smiling at her in admiration. But Jenna's eyes were burning with resentment. You think you've won, don't you? She sneered, stepping into Clara's path. Just wait. I won't let you ruin my reputation. Clara met her gaze, unafraid. I'm not trying to ruin anything. I'm just standing up for what's right. You can't bully people into silence anymore. With a huff, Jenna brushed past her. But Clara could feel the tension in the air. She knew that this was far from over. The confrontation had shaken things up, but it also stirred the pot of animosity. Clara was ready for whatever would come next. Over the next few days, the office was buzzing with whispers about the meeting. Clara noticed changes. A few coworkers approached her, sharing their own experiences of feeling marginalized or bullied. It felt good to connect with others and build a network of support. However, not everyone was pleased. Clara could sense that Jenna was plotting her revenge. She overheard hushed conversations and saw the glances exchanged among some of Jenna's allies. The office still felt divided, and Clara knew that the road ahead would be rocky. One afternoon, as Clara was cleaning the break room, she overheard Jenna and a few others laughing and whispering. She strained to hear what they were saying, and her heart sank as she caught snippets of their conversation. Clara thinks she can just waltz in here and act like she's important, Jenna scoffed. She doesn't know who she's dealing with. Clara felt anger rising in her chest. It was clear that Jenna hadn't learned anything from the meeting. She stepped away, trying to gather her thoughts. But as she turned to leave, she bumped into Mr. Thompson, who was entering the break room. Hey, Clara, he said, his voice low. You've stirred up quite the hornet's nest, haven't you? Clara raised her chin, defiantly. I'm just standing up for myself and others. It's about time someone did. Mr. Thompson sighed, glancing back toward the door where Jenna had just exited. You know she's not going to take this lying down, right? She has a lot of support in this office. I'm not afraid of her, Clara said, her resolve unwavering. People are starting to see what's really going on, and that's what matters. Bullying has to stop. Just then, Jenna returned, her face twisted in anger. You think you're the hero now, Clara? You're nothing but a janitor trying to play in the big leagues. You'll regret this. Clara took a step closer, meeting Jenna's gaze with determination. I'm not going anywhere. If you want to keep bullying me, you'll have to deal with everyone else who's tired of it too. The confrontation escalated, and Clara felt the adrenaline rush through her veins. You think you can intimidate me with your threats? That's not how this works anymore. I've had enough. Mr. Thompson watched the exchange with an expression of concern. Let's keep this professional. Ladies. Professional? Jenna laughed, but there was a sharp edge to her voice. This isn't over, Clara. Not by a long shot. With that, Jenna stormed off, leaving Clara feeling both empowered and unsettled. She knew she had ignited a fire in the office, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. That evening, Clara couldn't shake the anxiety bubbling inside her. As she headed home, her mind raced with thoughts of the confrontation. She knew she had to stay vigilant. Jenna wouldn't let this go easily. The next day, Clara arrived at the office early, determined to prepare for the upcoming HR meeting. She sat down at her desk and began writing down her thoughts and experiences, detailing the incidents that had occurred. She wanted to ensure her voice was heard, and she was ready to confront the bullying head-on. As she finished her notes, a shadow loomed over her desk. Clara looked up to see Mr. Harrison, standing there, a concerned expression on his face. Clara, can we talk for a moment? He asked. Of course, Mr. Harrison, Clara replied, her heart racing. Is everything okay? I just wanted to check in with you about the meeting. I know tensions are high, and I want to make sure you feel supported, he said, his tone sincere. I appreciate that, Clara said, feeling a mix of gratitude and apprehension. I'm just worried about Jenna and the other staff members who might not be on board with the changes. I understand your concerns, Mr. Harrison replied. We're implementing changes, but it will take time. I need you to remain strong and focused. We're in this together. As they spoke, Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her. Thank you for taking this seriously, Mr. Harrison. It means a lot to me. I mean it, Clara, he said, leaning closer. We need to make sure that everyone knows bullying will not be tolerated. I'll support you every step of the way. Just then, the office buzzed with activity as employees filtered in. Clara felt a surge of determination. She was ready to face whatever came next, and she wouldn't back down. As the meeting with HR approached, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung over her. She knew Jenna would do everything in her power to undermine her, and she had to be prepared. When the day of the meeting arrived, Clara gathered her notes and walked into the conference room, her heart pounding. She was ready to fight for a better workplace. But deep down, she wondered, would her efforts be enough? Would the changes she sought truly come to fruition? Or would Jenna's revenge tear everything apart? As the meeting unfolded, Clara spoke passionately about her experiences. HR listened carefully, taking notes, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that Jenna was plotting something in the shadows. Just as Clara felt a flicker of hope, the door swung open, and Jenna stormed in, a triumphant look on her face. I hope you're all ready for a surprise, Jenna declared, her voice dripping with sarcasm, because I've got something to share that will change everything. Clara's stomach dropped. What was Jenna planning? The tension in the room surged as everyone turned their attention to Jenna, and Clara knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that could turn everything on its head. What did Jenna have up her sleeve, and would Clara be able to stand her ground against whatever storm was about to unfold? The fate of their workplace, and Clara's own journey, hung in the balance. The atmosphere in the conference room shifted dramatically as Jenna strode in, her confident posture radiating a mix of defiance and mischief. Clara's heart raced, and a knot formed in her stomach. She knew Jenna's entrance was anything but benign. What surprise do you have for us, Jenna? Mr. Harrison asked, his voice firm but curious. Jenna smirked, flipping her hair over her shoulder. I just thought it would be fun to share a little insight into Clara's hardships. You know, the struggles she claims to be facing. Clara felt her blood run cold. What was Jenna planning? As the room went quiet, all eyes turned to Jenna, who took a seat at the front like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. Let's not pretend here, Jenna said, her voice smooth yet laced with venom. Clara likes to think of herself as the victim. How about we look at the real picture? Jenna, this isn't the time for games, Mr. Harrison said, trying to maintain control. But Clara could see the growing unease in his eyes. Oh, it's no game. I think the staff deserves to know what they're dealing with. Jenna leaned forward, her gaze piercing through Clara. Did you know that Clara here has a history of causing trouble? She's been in trouble with HR before, for being insubordinate, and even stealing supplies. Gasps rippled through the room. Clara felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under her. "That's not true," she exclaimed, her voice shaking. "I've never stolen anything, and I've always done my job well." "Really?" Jenna continued, her smile widening as she savored the tension. "Well, I guess we'll just have to ask HR to pull up your file, won't we? If I'm wrong, then you have nothing to worry about. But if I'm right," her words hung in the air like a dark cloud, threatening to overshadow everything. Mr. Harrison's expression hardened. "This isn't the time or place for personal attacks, Jenna. If you have concerns about Clara's work, they should have been addressed privately. I won't have this conversation devolve into gossip." Clara felt a surge of gratitude for Mr. Harrison's defense, but knew this was far from over. Jenna was clearly on a mission to discredit her, and she wouldn't stop without a fight. "Is that what you think?" Jenna challenged, her eyes narrowing. "That this is gossip? You're all in the dark. I'm just trying to shine a light on the truth." "What truth?" Clara shot back, her heart racing. "The truth that you're bullying me. The truth that you're trying to manipulate everyone to get your way." "Enough," Mr. Harrison shouted, his voice echoing in the tense room. "This needs to stop. Jenna, you will not continue to disrupt this meeting. We're here to discuss important matters, not to drag personal issues into it." Clara took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Mr. Harrison, I think it's crucial we address this right now. If Jenna has information about my past, then let's deal with it openly. But I assure you, I've always done my job to the best of my ability." Jenna laughed mockingly. "Oh, how noble of you. But trust me, the truth is far more complicated than that." As Jenna's words echoed in the room, Clara felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. She had worked hard to stand up for herself and her coworkers, but now it felt as though Jenna's malicious game was threatening to unravel everything. "Let's not get sidetracked," Mr. Harrison interjected. "This is a meeting about workplace culture, and I won't allow it to devolve into a personal feud. We will discuss the issues Clara raised and how we can improve the environment for everyone." "Why don't we just let HR handle this?" Jenna suggested, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "They'd love to hear about drama." Clara felt her face flush with anger. "This isn't drama, Jenna. This is about people's lives. You're using your power to intimidate, and it needs to stop." "Power?" Jenna scoffed. "You think you have power now just because you spoke up once? Don't flatter yourself." Clara felt the heat rising in her chest, a mix of anger and determination. "I'm not going to let you bully me anymore. I deserve to be treated with respect, just like everyone else in this room. We all do." A silence fell over the room, the weight of Clara's words settling like a heavy fog. The air was thick with tension, and Clara could see some of her coworkers shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "Clara, we all respect you for speaking up," one of her colleagues said, "but we need to focus on what's happening now. This meeting is about creating a better workplace." "Exactly," Mr. Harrison agreed, his voice steady. "We need to find solutions, not dig up old grievances." As the meeting continued, Clara remained on high alert. She could feel Jenna's eyes burning into her, a silent threat hanging in the air. The discussions about workplace culture resumed, with HR outlining potential strategies for improvement. But Clara knew that the real battle lay ahead. After the meeting, as Clara gathered her things, she caught a glimpse of Jenna lingering at the door, her expression unreadable. Clara's heart raced. "What now?" she thought. "What's she planning?" "Clara," Jenna called out, her voice tinged with false sweetness. "I hope you're not upset about what I said. I just wanted to make sure you understood the stakes." "What do you mean?" Clara replied, standing tall. "This is about standing up for what's right. You should be ashamed of yourself." "Oh, I'm not ashamed. I'm just getting started. You see, Clara, when you mess with the wrong people, you might just find yourself in a very precarious situation. I hope you're prepared for what's coming." Clara's heart pounded in her chest as Jenna turned and walked away, leaving Clara feeling more uncertain than ever. What did she mean? Clara thought, anxiety creeping in. What could she possibly do? As the days turned into weeks, the office atmosphere gradually shifted. Clara noticed more and more employees starting to stand up against the bullying culture that had prevailed for so long. HR rolled out their sensitivity training, and people began to express their concerns openly. It felt like a victory, but Clara remained on edge, knowing Jenna was still lurking in the background. One afternoon, Clara received a message from HR requesting a follow-up meeting regarding her experiences in the office. She felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Had her concerns finally reached the right ears? As she walked into the HR office, she was greeted by a panel of people, including Mr. Harrison. Clara took a seat, her heart racing. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said, trying to sound confident despite her nerves. "Clara," Mr. Harrison began, "we wanted to discuss your contributions to the recent meetings and your experiences. We take this seriously and appreciate your input. However, we have some concerning feedback that we need to address." Clara's stomach dropped. "What kind of feedback?" "Well," HR began, "it seems that there are accusations regarding your performance and behavior in the office. Jenna has made some serious claims, and we need to investigate further." Clara felt her heart race as a wave of anger washed over her. "That's ridiculous. Jenna has been trying to undermine me since I spoke up. Those accusations are baseless." "I understand your frustration," Mr. Harrison said, "but we must follow protocol. We can't dismiss her claims without proper investigation." "Clara, it's important that you remain calm," HR said gently. "We'll look into it, but we need you to provide us with any evidence of your work and contributions to counter these claims." "Evidence?" Clara exclaimed. "I've done my job. I don't need to prove my worth. Jenna's just trying to intimidate me because she can't stand that I've stood up for myself." "Please, Clara," Mr. Harrison said firmly. "This is a process, and we need to approach it objectively. Can you gather any records or testimonials from coworkers who support your claims?" Clara clenched her fists, frustration boiling inside her. "I will," she said, her voice steady. "But this isn't over, and I won't let Jenna get away with this." As Clara left the meeting, her mind raced with thoughts of how to defend herself. She knew she had allies in the office, but she also felt the weight of Jenna's accusations looming over her like a dark cloud. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and determination. Clara spent hours gathering her notes, seeking out coworkers to provide testimonials, and preparing her defense. She knew Jenna was doing everything in her power to discredit her, but Clara refused to back down. Finally, the day arrived for the follow-up meeting with HR. Clara entered the room, her heart pounding, but her resolve strong. She had gathered testimonies and evidence of her work, ready to confront the claims against her. As the meeting unfolded, Jenna was also present, her expression smug. Clara could feel her eyes watching every move she made, but Clara was determined to show her strength. Mr. Harrison began the meeting. "Thank you both for being here. We're here to address the concerns raised by Jenna and to hear Clara's side of the story." Jenna leaned back in her chair, a smirk on her face. "Let's see how this goes, shall we?" Clara took a deep breath, prepared to present her evidence. She shared her experiences, the contributions she made, and the support she had gathered from her coworkers. As she spoke, she could see some nodding along, and it gave her a boost of confidence. But Jenna was relentless. "But Clara, how do we know you're not just spinning a tale? The accusations I made are serious, and you need to take responsibility for your actions." Clara felt the anger rising again. "What I've done is not the issue here. This is about the toxic culture you've created in this workplace. I won't let you hide behind false accusations anymore." The tension escalated in the room as HR tried to maintain order. Clara could feel Jenna's gaze piercing through her, and she knew she had to stay strong. As the meeting dragged on, Clara's heart raced. They were nearing the conclusion, and she knew this was her chance to make a final statement. "Jenna," Clara said, her voice steady, "I'm not afraid of you. You may think you can bully me into submission, but I refuse to be silenced. This workplace deserves better, and I will fight for it. If you want to continue this, I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about your actions." Jenna's smirk faltered for a moment, replaced by a look of anger. "You think you're a hero, don't you? But you're just a nobody trying to play a victim. We'll see how far that gets you." Clara felt a surge of courage. "I might be a nobody to you, but I'm not the only one. There are many of us in this office who want to see change. You can't keep this up forever." With that, Clara knew she had crossed a line. The tension in the room reached a boiling point, and it felt like the storm was about to break. Just then, a loud knock echoed through the room. Everyone turned to see the office manager standing at the door, her face pale and anxious. "I need to speak with you all right now," she said urgently, her eyes darting around the room. There's been a serious incident, and we need to address it immediately. Clara's heart raced. What could possibly be happening now? As the office manager stepped into the room, Clara knew this was far from over. Whatever was about to unfold would change everything. Chapter conclusion. The conference room buzzed with anticipation, and Clara felt a chill run down her spine. What did the office manager have to say, and how would it affect her fight against Jenna's bullying? She could sense that they were on the brink of something monumental, and the tension in the air was almost unbearable. As the office manager prepared to speak, Clara couldn't help but wonder, would this incident be the turning point in her battle for justice, or was it just the beginning of an even bigger storm? The fate of her workplace, and her own future, hung precariously in the balance. The room was thick with tension as Clara waited for the office manager to speak. Her heart raced, and she could feel the anxiety of her coworkers pressing against her, a palpable sense of dread hanging in the air. What had happened? What can be so urgent that it interrupted their already tense meeting? Thank you all for your patience, the office manager began, her voice shaky but determined. I'm here to inform you that there has been a serious incident involving Jenna and some of our employees. Clara's heart sank. The confrontation with Jenna was far from over. This was just another chapter in their ongoing battle. We received reports of inappropriate behavior and harassment from several staff members, the office manager continued, glancing nervously at Jenna. After a thorough investigation, we've determined that Jenna's actions have created a hostile work environment. Gasps echoed around the room. Clara's eyes widened in shock. Had her coworkers really come forward? Had they felt empowered enough to speak up about Jenna's bullying? Effective immediately, Jenna is suspended from her duties while we conduct further investigation, the office manager stated, her voice steadying. This is a serious matter, and we will not tolerate any form of discrimination or harassment in our workplace. Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was a significant victory, not just for herself, but for everyone who had endured Jenna's toxic behavior. The whispers and murmurs in the room grew louder as her colleagues exchanged shocked looks and hushed conversations. Jenna's face paled as she processed the news. This is ridiculous, she shouted, rising from her seat. You can't do this to me. I have rights. Your rights do not include making others feel unsafe at work, the office manager replied firmly. We have a responsibility to protect our employees and create a safe environment for everyone. You will have the opportunity to respond to these allegations in the proper setting, but for now, you're not welcome here. Clara felt a rush of empowerment. Finally, the truth was coming to light. She glanced at her colleagues, who were nodding in agreement, their expressions supportive. It felt as if a weight had been lifted off everyone's shoulders. Clara, the office manager turned to her. I want to thank you for bringing this issue to our attention and for being brave enough to speak out. It's not easy to stand up against someone in a position of power, and your courage has encouraged others to do the same. Clara could hardly believe her ears. Thank you, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt the tears welling in her eyes, a mix of relief and joy. She had fought for herself and for her coworkers, and now they could finally move forward. As Jenna stormed out of the room, her face twisted in anger. Clara felt a sense of victory. The battle was far from over, but this was a significant turning point. It was a moment that would echo in the office long after Jenna was gone. Over the next few weeks, Clara noticed a remarkable change in the workplace. The discussions that had once been filled with fear and tension now brimmed with hope and determination. Employees were coming forward with their stories, sharing their experiences, and voicing their concerns without the shadow of fear that Jenna had cast over them. HR implemented new policies aimed at creating a healthier work environment, and employees actively participated in discussions about improving workplace culture. Clara felt a sense of camaraderie growing among her coworkers as they united for a common cause, ensuring that everyone felt safe and respected. One afternoon, Clara sat with a group of coworkers during lunch. They laughed and shared stories, their bond strengthening as they discussed the changes they wanted to see moving forward. Clara felt a warmth in her heart, knowing that they had all contributed to this positive shift. Clara, you really made a difference, one of her coworkers said, smiling. You inspired us all to speak up. Thank you for being brave. Clara felt a rush of gratitude. I couldn't have done it without all of you. We're stronger together. As they finished their lunch, Clara received a notification on her phone. It was an email from HR, inviting her to a meeting regarding a new initiative they were launching, a diversity and inclusion committee. Clara felt her excitement rise. She had always believed in the importance of creating an inclusive environment, and now she had the opportunity to be a part of that change. The days turned into weeks, and as Clara joined the committee, she poured her heart into developing programs that would foster unity and respect among all employees. She felt a renewed sense of purpose and belonging, knowing that she was playing a vital role in shaping the future of her workplace. As Clara reflected on the journey she had taken, she couldn't help but feel proud. She had faced challenges, stood up to a bully, and inspired others to do the same. The scars of her past would always be a part of her, but they no longer defined her. The day of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee's first event arrived, and Clara stood before her colleagues, ready to share her vision. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady. "We've come so far, and I believe we can create an even better workplace together. Let's continue to support one another and make sure everyone feels valued and respected." Applause erupted in the room, and Clara felt a swell of emotion. She was surrounded by people who believed in change, who had stood together against adversity. The future felt bright, and Clara knew that they could overcome any challenge that lay ahead. As the event progressed, Clara found herself reflecting on the power of unity and the strength of the human spirit. She realized that while the battle against racism and discrimination would never truly end, they had taken significant steps toward making their workplace a better place. In the end, Clara's journey wasn't just about standing up against one person. It was about standing up for herself and for everyone who had felt marginalized. She had transformed her pain into purpose, and together with her colleagues, they had created a legacy of change. The fight for equality continued, and Clara knew she would always be a part of that struggle. But she also knew that with courage and determination, they could create a brighter future for themselves and generations to come. Clara knew this was just the beginning. The fight against racism and discrimination was ongoing, and she was ready to be part of the solution.